Of course, to add to the comments that Ghalib has already made, we are discussing today and yesterday in the closed sessions a reality of a region that has been plagued by cold wars between various hegemons and aspirant hegemons in the region, plagued by occupation, at least two, one still existing, maybe more than one still existing. Proxy wars, Syria is a good example perhaps. Continued bombing by some countries of their neighbors, Yemen, Libya are examples. New states, pseudo-states, attempted governance entities that have been created in the past few years. All of these are part of the character of the region that we're talking about now and talking about in the context of a new security architecture. Perhaps some of the discussions yesterday suggested that perhaps we should be a little more modest in how we understand the theme that we're talking about, that we should rather be talking about arrangements and coordination rather than architecture. But the point is that the conversation needs to be kicked off at some point about where we're going in terms of the security of the region, and this is that attempt. An attempt to kick off that discussion modestly, which is modesty in this regard is very necessary and useful, and modesty implies realism and care and sensitivity as well. Of course, the region that we're talking about, and some might even question whether it can legitimately be called a region, the Middle East, North Africa region is a huge area, a huge region. For various reasons, including its vastness. Others also have a stake in what happens in this region. And I think this is an important consideration that we need to have while having our discussions today. One example is the case of Libya, which is still steeped in a civil war, perhaps not as bad in terms of loss of life, etc., as in Syria, but is still steeped in a civil war that has 2, maybe 3, recently 4 different governing structures, and one doesn't know when they might be reconciled, has a number of tribes that add to the complexity of the problem, etc. But apart from Libyans themselves, those who suffer mostly from the fallout from what is happening in Libya are not others in that region, in the Middle East, North Africa region. In fact, it is Africans in sub-Saharan Africa that are suffering the most. And they are suffering to a large extent because of weapons and arms being dumped in that country by the United States, by NATO, by various Gulf countries, by recently the involvement of Russia. And all of this impacts on the rest, or on sub-Saharan Africa to a great extent. A number of countries that have been affected by the fallout from Libya. And so when we're talking about how do we move forward in the region, we have to consider who else has a stake in that region and what it means for them. And so our notion of new security arrangements of necessity has to imply new partnerships as well. Let me end on this point of perhaps a little cautious point, that in a world today where all kinds of discourses are being converted into security discourses, we don't want our discussion about the Middle East and North Africa region to be purely securitized. That we think that the security issue is one issue in the broader discussion about a region that is, we think, in the throes of a new phase of civilization building, going beyond imposed solutions that it has endured. And such changes are always painful. Birth pangs are always painful, I'm told, because I'm not a woman, so I have to believe what I'm told. But birth pangs are never pleasant. They're always painful. And so that is perhaps what we are seeing. And so in the attempt to birth a new region with new arrangements in general, the security part of it is just one angle. in a new phase of a civilizational project. And so we don't want it to be mistaken that, that we are playing into the kind of discourse that is taking place around the world, where all issues become issues of security and everything has to be dealt with from the perspective of the military and security. With that, and on behalf of the Afro-Middle East Center as well, I want to welcome you and thank you for participating in our conference today. And we hope that we will end up the day in a very productive way with some good ideas to move forward with these new birth pangs. Thank you.